Hello everyone, my name is Maria Antonia Salome, and today I'd like to share with you part of my research journey. You can call me Antonia or Tonia, whichever you prefer. I am a PhD student at the University of Florence, supported by a scholarship from the Next Generation EU program. My research focuses on textile scraps and is part of Rewaste, a national project that explores how pre-consumer textile waste is generated and managed. The goal is to identify new strategies, methods, and tools for using textile waste both inside and outside the fashion supply chain. I come from a background in fashion design and pattern making, but over time I became more and more interested in the environmental challenges of the fashion industry. The transition to research came quite naturally, as I felt the need to explore solutions not only as a designer, but also by studying the systemic impact of production and waste. This presentation is based on a practice-led design experience developed during my visiting research period at the Swedish School of Textiles at University of Borås. It explores how artistic, hands-on approaches in fashion design can generate the forms of knowledge that digital methods alone cannot provide. The Swedish School of Textiles provided a perfect environment to explore these questions, combining technical innovation with a strong focus on sustainability and practice-led research. Access to labs and discussion with researchers helped me refine my approach and broaden the scope of my work. This experience became an epiphany, revealing the profound differences in knowledge acquisition through manual practice against digital methodologies in garment construction. The research focused on textile waste from the garment cutting stage, a critical moment of material loss in fashion production. In the picture, you can see an example of this textile waste coming from the cutting stage and mixed with other materials like bioplastic film and paper, usually used in the fashion industry to improve the cut. According to Romanian textile artist Marion Baruch, these scraps are not empty. They are containers of value because they represent the whole supply chain with all the people and knowledge of the manufacturing system. In this context, these offcuts are conceptualized as negative spaces, a term developed in this research to describe the shapes and voids left behind after cutting. These offcuts are the negative spaces of both the garment and the fabric, and in my opinion, the word negative here takes a double meaning. Negative because they are the waste comes out from the fabric after you cut it, and on the other hand, it has an artistic meaning in which the negative part is a complementary part of the total image we see, so it has a positive vibes too. These negative spaces are not only material voids, they represent untapped potential. My aim was not simply to reuse waste, but to redesign the way we think about scraps, not as leftovers, but as starting points for new ideas. This project explores textile waste in the pre-consumer phase of fashion production, focusing on the creative potential of fabric offcuts. In industrial settings, fabric scraps are often discarded without considering their value. But when you isolate them, observe their shape, their angles, their relation to the body, you begin to see design possibilities. This shift in perspective, seeing waste as a form, was essential to the development of this work. Practice-based research means learning through doing. In fashion design, this includes cutting, sewing, and draping, where tactile engagement becomes a way of thinking through materials. This hands-on process allowed me to test and reflect through making. The first phase involved digital experimentation to prepare for working with physical scraps. I began by selecting a pattern and optimizing the layout for the cutting table. Since I had no access to industrial layouts, I used a pattern from the Cloud 3D software library. At this stage, the goal was not to design a garment, but to explore how fabric usage could be optimized digitally. For this reason, I chose a simple female white shirt in a standard size to work with a more realistic pattern. So I prepared the layout trying to optimize the fabric space to reduce the scraps as much as possible following the traditional pattern layering and the zero waste design approach to confront the different negative spaces coming out. Working with digital tools, I generated the negative space and used them in Cloud 3D to drape a new garment or a shape that reminds of a garment to understand and visualize the amount of fabric and its potential. Still, I noticed how the software removed the physical negotiation with the material. No stretch, no resistance, no weight. These absences became the very things I wanted to investigate in the manual phase. Then I worked directly with fabric, using hand sewing and draping on the mannequin, experimenting with the cutting table. Thanks to the support of the Tank Lab, I had the opportunity to cut the fabric and finally have some real negative spaces. This allowed me to explore how the body and material guide the design process in ways that digital tools do not. For the first proto, we decided to cut hand bed sheet in 100% cotton. After cutting, the garment scraps, or negative spaces, came to my desk to start with the project. I tested the three different approaches to transform a fabric offcuts into a new garment. First, I tried to replicate what I had done digitally. Second, I used a mood board inspired by the material itself and draped based on a specific design idea. Third, I let the scraps I let the shapes and lines of the scraps lead the composition, assembling them freely into new form. Each of these methods offered different challenges. The last one, in particular, was the most generative. Unexpected forms emerged that I would never have designed intentionally. Hands on, making revealed things often flattened in digital environments. The weight of the fabric, its resistance, how it interacts with the body. This process activated what we might call embodied knowledge, where thinking emerges through touch, time, and material attention. This aligns with the idea of thinking hands or narrating hands, where cognition is grounded in physical interaction. Just as doctors use their hands to detect signs in the body, designers use theirs to understand fabric, form, and fit. As you can see, the digital and physical approach generated different implications for the manipulation of fabric, often referring to the edges of fabric, the size of the part, and so on. In the digital space, you're not worried about edges, seam allowance, or straight line, because everything is possible, even connecting small parts and giving them the main part in the garment construction. It is not a request to consider the wrong side of the fabric, how to define the inner part of the garment. You have to design and develop ideas without worrying about the little details because it is not real. From this point, it is easy to understand that a tailor's knowledge of the body is not abstract, it developed through making and handling. Design, in this sense, is embodied. In the meanwhile, I had the opportunity to hold a workshop with students from the first year of BA in fashion design at University of Boros. Students worked with different scraps that came from the previous assignment and from the waste bin they have in the garment construction lab. Working with students allowed me to explore two key aspects of designing with waste materials and the negative spaces from the cutting table. On one hand, it was possible to identify various categories and types of products that can be created using pre-consumer post-industrial waste materials. On the other hand, it provided an opportunity to investigate the different approaches adopted by students to develop their object. The symmetry of waste materials to recreate the symmetry of a pattern, the combination of different colors and materials to reproduce an existing garment, to use the negative space to replicate the negative space of a garment, thereby creating an alternative piece of clothing, combining scraps and matching colors to develop an object unrelated to clothing, such as cushion animal for home decor, or at last using scraps to produce an entire garment without incorporating other materials. In addition to these two aspects, the project also offered insight into the cultural approach to waste, viewing it as a material that holds both value and poetic potential. At the end of the workshop, I started a discussion with students to confront the topic of the textile waste and use them as a design tool. Different opinions came out from the conversation. Some say that it's a faster way to design. Others believe that designing with scraps was a bit limiting, but at the same time, it also forced you to be creative in space. Someone else underlined that it is the shape to help you to understand what you can design, and therefore it is a piece of scraps. It doesn't matter. You can try without worries. Since they are scraps, you can be more free to develop your design idea, and this freedom allows the designer to create something more meaningful. This experience has a strong implication for fashion education. If we rely only on digital tools, we risk losing our connection to materials. Manual skills are not outdated. They are essential for understanding sustainability, design decision making, and bodily interaction. We need hybrid methodologies that value both craft and technology. Students should be given the time and space to touch, to test, and even to fail. In conclusion, handmaking is more than a technique, it's a way of knowing. It fosters sensitivity, awareness, and care. Preserving manual skills alongside digital innovation allows future designers to approach fashion in its full complexity, materially, physically, and ecologically. Thank you for your attention. Feel free to reach me with your questions and suggestions. And bye.